Good morning. My name is Gene Chan, Hearing Officer for San Francisco Public Works. Cerise Waiters is the clerk of this hearing. This hearing is being recorded by Zoom and will be available afterwards through a link on the San Francisco Public's website, sfpublicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there is no sign-in sheet. So if you would like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the email address listed on the hearing notice. This public hearing is being held to consider one item, order number 211314, to consider an appeal for the illegal removal of one street tree adjacent to 869 Vermont Street. The fine issued is $10,000. My job as the hearing officer is to gather the facts for the hearing item, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make a determination. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the director. The director will make the final determination. When the director's determination is made, the department will notify you of them if you have provided contact information. The hearing will proceed as follows. I will ask Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. There is no time limit for this presentation. Then I will allow the property owner or its representative to speak, then any member of the public or witness who wants to speak. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you're a party to this proceeding, I will call on you to speak. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. If you're a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comments. Then use Zoom's raise your hand feature if you're on a computer to put yourself in the queue to speak. If you are dialing in on your phone, dial *9 to indicate you're raising your hand. When it is your turn to speak, I will recognize you. If on your phone and you're muted, press *6 to unmute yourself. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not the department or the applicant. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. We will now begin the hearing. At this time, we will open the hearing to public comments. Members of the public may make any comments on matters that are within the department's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. Are there any public comments at this time? Seeing no public comments, I will close the public comment. This item's closed. The first item on today's agenda is order number 211314, related to 869 Vermont Street. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Yes, good morning. Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry with San Francisco, and representing staff this morning to just present the information about the administrative fine that we issued for the removal of one street tree without a permit. I'll move over to a PowerPoint in a few minutes, but the tree species is or was a bottlebrush tree, Callistemon citrinus is the Latin name or scientific name. The genus was changed recently to be Melaleuca. So Melaleuca citrinus is also an acceptable Latin or scientific name for the species, but most people call it a bottlebrush. And let me go ahead and I'll share my screen. I have a PowerPoint that we can review. Hold on a moment. go. Hold on just a sec. I wish I could learn to screen share a little more efficiently. Screen 1, 2. Let me pull the PowerPoint up first. I think that may help. Slideshow from beginning. And now let's try the share. Screen. Probably just seeing my desktop at the moment. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Pardon me. Try another. Screen. There we go. And then Cerise, if you could just confirm once the start of the PowerPoint is up on the screen.
Yes, it's up. We can see it.
Okay, thank you. And
yeah.
sorry for the delay.
That's okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll provide some general background about our ordinance in general before we get into the details of the item that we're reviewing today. On each month, we may have 1 to 3 or 5 administrative cases. This morning, we only have 1. So we cover some boilerplate policies and language up front and get into the site details after that. So just stepping back, big picture, San Francisco has an urban forestry ordinance, and it's within Article 16 of the Public Works Code. And there are a number of different sections within the Public Works Code, Article 16, that discusses the importance of protection of trees and landscape material. And one of the primary sections is 808, protection of trees and landscape material. Subsection A, injury to or destruction of trees prohibited. It shall be unlawful for any person to intentionally, maliciously, or through gross negligence injure or destroy a street tree, any tree on city property, a significant tree, or a landmark tree. In addition to the penalties set forth in these sections, the director may require any person who removes or destroys a tree in violation of the provisions of this Article 16 to pay for each tree removed or destroyed a sum of $10,000 or the tree's replacement value, whichever is greater. Because the tree has already been removed, we're not able to perform an appraised value. So in this case, the minimum fine amount is $10,000. The director may require any person who injures a tree in violation of the provisions to pay a sum of money equal to the diminishment of the tree's value. In this case, that's not relevant. Where an abutting property owner removed a tree or trees without obtaining a permit, the department shall require that the property owner plant a replacement street tree or trees with total diameter measured 6 inches above ground that is equal to or greater than the total diameter of the street tree or trees that were removed without a permit. And so we'll emphasize this a few times today because there's the monetary fine amount, but what often becomes more expensive is planting the required tree or trees to match the diameter of the one removed without a permit. So there's a section about removal. If an adjacent or abutting property owner desires a permit to remove a street tree, they need to apply on designated form. The department may grant or deny the permit in accordance with a number of procedures. If the department grants a tree removal permit, it shall require that a street tree or trees of equivalent value to the one removed be planted in the place of the removed tree, unless it makes written findings detailing the basis for waiving or modifying this requirement. Construction work, this relates to active construction sites, large infrastructure projects, or you know, upgrades to houses. So in this case, it's not an active construction site, so we will skip over that. Within our code, we have all these words are defined, and the word injure or injury has a very long description. I'm not going to read through all of it, but it outlines all the various ways that trees may be damaged, such as cutting, carving, painting, transplanting, knocking over. And the key thing I want to point out that pruning, which in and of itself will kill or cause a tree to decline, or severing of a part of a tree. So even pruning itself, if not done with skill or intent, can injure a tree to the point where we need to remove and replace it. Regarding the penalties, we've covered this already, but the director may require any person who removes a tree to pay a tree removal fine of $10,000 or the tree's replacement value. This is just the sections where this comes from. This subsection 3 below is related to when multiple violations have occurred. It's not relevant for today's case. Just overall summary is that trees are more than just beautiful additions to urban life. They really are an essential component to an ecosystem and provide enormous environmental and social benefits. A permit is required to remove any street tree, significant tree, or landmark tree. It's illegal to injure a tree. Injuries include excessive pruning and malicious acts like nailing objects to trees, and negligent acts like vehicular accidents. An illegal removal of a tree requires replacement with equivalent inches in total diameter of the street tree or trees that were removed. It is a property owner responsibility to know the law. Ignorance of a particular requirement is not, a reasonable excuse. This is regarding pruning, which we're not really dealing with today, so we won't even go into the details around proper pruning, but we issue similar fines for excessive pruning or when an entire canopy is removed and just some of the main branches are left behind. In this case, the tree was cut back to the trunk. It wasn't pruning in any way. Generally, we also like to just talk about the city's change in policy as of July 1st, 2017, is that the city now is responsible for maintaining all the trees within the public right-of-way. And we have a key map and a schedule of maintenance that we follow. We are a little bit behind schedule, but it just shows behind the scenes that cities organized into grids and we work through maintenance of street trees. Before that, most trees were maintained by adjacent property owners. We're now up to 75% complete with our first round of maintenance. And here's just some more visual material about our street tree maintenance program. So those are some of our key policies that are established in our ordinance. With that, we'll move on to the case today, order number 211314, 869 Vermont Street, to consider an appeal for the illegal removal of one street tree. The fine issued is $10,000. I have a number of visuals just to show the subject tree is pictured here in this Google Street View image from March 2023. It's not in flower, but it typically will have red flowers that bloom for several months each year. And this is on Vermont Street, which is in trivia in San Francisco is technically more crooked than Lombard Street. So that's always a trivia contest. And Potrero Hill, Vermont Street, technically has more extreme right and left turns than the crooked street. So that's just something to note. And here's a view of the tree and the property at 869 Vermont Street, just showing again the tree with the flowers, and the location is clearly in the roadway. So not only is the tree most street trees are typically in a sidewalk setting. This one's in the roadway, so clearly within the public right of way, across from the property, across the sidewalk, in the roadway. We received a complaint about the possible illegal removal from a neighbor who we have 311. There's a number of ways to reach out to the city to ask if something was permitted or not. And so that's how it came to our attention. Certainly, if we drove down the street and saw the stump, we would likely stop and document it as well. So it doesn't really matter how the information came to light. Everything's in the public right of way. It's all very visual. People see things and they just wonder, like, oh, is that permitted? And so in November, we documented the possibility of an illegal removal. We found that the subject tree was cut back. All the branches were removed, and this is just a close-up of the work that was done. Again, a few just establishing photos of the site. I did notice right away that there was clearly a property for sale situation, which we'll talk more about later. These images are just establishing that it was a tree. A tree is a plant or a bush. A large or woody plant or bush is how we define a tree. Definitely large and woody. The trunk diameter 6 inches above grade. It measured 11 inches. And again, the property lines on this side of the block are in line with the far right image of the facades where they meet up with that stairway in the distance. So the property lines on this side of the street stop where the stairway begins. And so the tree was within the public right of way, and just showing the scale, the size of the trunk at the base. And just a little bit more about our program of tree management. Earth Day started in 1970 and was founded in San Francisco, so no surprise that trees, symbol of the environment, are important in San Francisco and are protected. So this tree actually has like a equivalent social security number. 188882 is its unique site identification number. It's in our tree database. It's also in our new computerized maintenance management system, or CMMS, tree database with X and Y lat long coordinates, and we track its maintenance history. Here it is also in our street tree map, which is a public facing map where property owners can look to see when tree maintenance is scheduled for trees in their neighborhood. And that's just showing the subject tree on our map within the public right of way. And regarding the public right of way, I just wanted to clarify how we establish that. So a private property in this image is shown in gray, light gray in color. Anything that's in a white area on this map is considered public right of way. And so in this image, to the left, there's a red rectangle denoting 869 Vermont Street. On the left is the straight curb line. So that's the curb. And then the roadway, you can see, is diagonal as it crisscrosses down the roadway. So just showing again that all of the sidewalk here, the median, the bulb out planter, if we want to call it that, are all within the public right of way. Here's an aerial photo of the same. Again, the red rectangle is private property, and to the left of that is public right of way. On the far side of the Vermont Street right of way is open space area that's managed by the Recreation and Park Department. So regarding we have the monetary fine, but what's really challenging is that the bigger challenge here is the replacement requirement. And so reading from our code, it says, in addition, where a property owner removed a street tree or trees without obtaining a permit, the department shall require that the owner plant a replacement tree or trees with total diameter measured at 6 inches above ground. that is equal to or greater than the total diameter of the tree or trees that were removed without a permit. And so what we need to do is we establish, well, what is measured 6 inches above grade? What is that diameter? So we did visit the site to take that measurement. And at 6 inches above grade, the trunk diameter is 11 inches. So the administrative fine requires replacement with a tree or trees with a trunk diameter of 11 inches or greater, measured at 6 inches above grade. And just noting that this could, in theory, cost more than the actual $10,000 fine itself. The final challenge is also to get a new tree established. It requires weekly watering, certainly for the first 3 years. And if it's a very large tree that goes in as a replacement, it could take a couple of additional years of supplemental watering during the dry season to get it through. So a couple of things about the removal, and I'll wrap up in a couple minutes. We have a robust permit process for when a tree is removed, and one of the things that we would do would be to let the public know that a tree is proposed for removal. And this is just some visual material showing how, like on our website, you know, we put notices on the tree, we put it on our website so that anyone across the city has access to what's proposed for removal. And the public may elect to protest removal. And then if staff have denied the request for removal, the applicant can appeal that denial and also have it go to a hearing. But then all decisions that result from a Public Works tree permit hearing are also appealable to Board of Appeals. So when a tree is removed without a permit, it's bypassing two processes that staff and the department don't have control over. We ultimately will make a decision either approving a tree for removal or denying it, but all of those decisions are appealable to Board of Appeals. And that commission has the ultimate decision-making authority. So in this case, we didn't go through a notification process, and not only that, but the Board of Appeals process was bypassed as well. In general, we also point out that if a property owner hires a contractor to perform work and something wrong occurs, I use this example all the time. If you hire a roofer to replace your roof, but they replace it with like a thatched hut, and Department of Building Inspection requires the owner to replace that, the issue is really not between the property owner and the city. The issue is between the property owner and the contractor they hired, who should know what the code requirements are for replacing roofs. So the same thing is true when it comes to trees. They're assets, and whomever actually cut the tree down should know the rules in San Francisco where they're performing work. Now, when someone hires a licensed qualified contractor, they have the state contractors licensing board as a supportive arm to help enforce and protect consumers. If someone's hired who's not a professional, it's just a friend of a friend or just a handy person who doesn't have permits, you're less protected because you're likely not going to go after them to have this issue resolved. So that's just a little information about that. And just reiterating, this is just language we often use in these cases, but tree contractors who perform tree work need to be properly licensed with the State of California Contractors State License Board, and should also be ISA certified arborists. They should know the tree pruning standards, and that tree removal permit requirements exist within all the municipalities where they perform tree work. This is a website where you can place complaints against contractors. Just in general, when we saw the structure of a for sale sign on the property, there's a few things that come to mind. There's a number of different motivations regarding real estate, but there was an active listing at the time that this tree was removed. More times than not, the motivation may have been a view in the home out to perceived view. Another motivation would be to make the frontage of the listing or the property visible and more easily understandable by those scrolling and clicking through images of property that are for sale. And the final one would be, which is a big one, is this perceived notion that the tree would be a barrier to future development. If this property is marketed as a potential tear down and a rebuild with a number of more units, that's going to greatly increase the property value. A developer might perceive this tree as being in the way of demolishing an existing structure and building a replacement. So I'm just pointing that out, that sometimes unfortunately we see this within the real estate industry. Just noting that the property sold in December. There's a photo of the tree in the listing. It's showing the property without a tree. And again, just speculating as to what the motivation is. I do want to ask a couple of questions, which is if there are disclosure documents that state there's an active fine, typically we try to prevent the transfer of a title when we have an outstanding administrative fine. I don't think that prevented the sale of this property, but we're not going to let this matter go away. And if the new property complains, we will simply explain that the previous owner should have disclosed a known administrative fine. The other thing is that we still need to deal with how the replacement tree would need to be replanted. The property of note right now is Housing Corporation located in Newport Beach, California. But to recap and finally allow the owner's rep speak, just to encapsulate this all, technically there's still some trunk remaining, and so we do require, whenever a tree is removed without a permit, we still require a process to go through. If there was no trunk remaining, we wouldn't require posting notices. In this case, we would require this removal permit application, which would be $475. We'd post a notice on the tree, nearby poles, we put it on our website, and we go through a tree removal permit process. And I was thinking if it was a lower stump, we wouldn't do that. But if the stump is shoulder high, we might as well go through the process. Also, this issue of the 11-inch size replacement tree is also required. One last thing to note is if this is about development and clearing the space for future development of the site, the new construction is going to trigger a tree planting requirement. And the new construction review process requires us to review it, and basically we'll see that there's an issue with it. So ironically, the new construction would trigger a planting requirement, whereas if the tree was just kept intact, they wouldn't have to plant a new tree because there's an existing tree already. But I just wanted to cover as much information as possible so that whatever the director's recommendation, we just have all the moving pieces in place, and it'll be easier for us to all follow after there's been a recommendation. I just want to thank everyone for their patience. And again, we only have this one case this morning, so it allowed me to dive into some of the details a little bit more clearly. So I just want to thank everyone for their patience. And yeah, let me know if any questions come up during the hearing process. Thank you.
Thank you. I will open it up to, I assume, Michelle Pender, who is the property owner rep.
Hello, can you guys hear me and see me?
We can hear you.
Huh, okay, let's see.
We
How do I
can't,
do this?
you can't be seen unless I promote you to a panelist. Would you like me to promote you? Do you have a presentation or something?
Well, I mean, I have a response, and so I'm happy
Okay.
to be on, so we can
Okay.
all see each other. Sure, thank you.
Just one moment, and you should see a prompt and you'll be able to reply.
Okay. join as panelist. Okay. Hi, guys. Okay, I'm in my car, so the lighting's a little crazy, but can you all hear me and see me?
Yes.
Great. So, hi, I'm Michelle Pender, and I am the real estate agent who represented the seller on this property. And I am sincerely angered. I just can't believe this happened. I apologize. I'm a tree lover, and I would love to help out with any city tree programs that you have. And my office would as well. I talked to my manager. We are just surprised that this happened. At the end of the day, this is what happened. We hired our handyman to clean up the foliage on the property. We did not tell him to chop down a city property. And I'm just shocked that his workers did not know an obvious city tree when they saw one. So when I saw this, I was in complete like speechless, essentially. And I thought maybe the tree would grow, but I did research and I realized that if you cut a tree in half, the important tissues for the tree to survive cannot grow back. So that's correct? That the tree will not grow back? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
no worries. I'll make a note.
Yeah. So I am
Yeah.
so sorry about this tree. And I let my handyman know that this was not what you were supposed to do. He was supposed to clean it up so it would look pretty for the listing. I would never cut down a city property or even, outsource that to be done. And whether that impedes the views for the future developer, that's not our problem, right? The developer can deal with whatever trees are. That was a beautiful tree, and I'm so sorry it's gone. So that's the situation. I mean, my seller said, have your handyman clean up the foliage of the property so it shows better because it was a fixer, it was an eyesore for the neighborhood. The good news is the new owner is a lovely man who is going to turn that into a beautiful place. He's going to live in it himself. He's not going to develop a skyscraper per se. He's just going to make it his own. And so he would have liked to have that tree there as well. I met some neighbors and they voiced their opinion, and I I echo what they say. So I don't know. This was an accident, but I understand that. I mean, it's a violation. So I don't know where that puts us in this situation. Um, Again, I'm willing to do volunteer work and help out with the city. Um, I'd really be interested in helping out, and I could recruit some fellow realtors for my office and in the community if that's something that would 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 help our city out a little bit. But I'm a tree lover, so I'm sincerely sorry that this happened. And of course, the handyman's passing the buck. Well, you told us to do this. Well, no, I told you to clean up the foliage on the property, not chop down a piece of city property and a beautiful living organism. So that's all I can say. I mean, do we have a case? I don't know. Um, Probably not, since this was, I mean, the outcome is the outcome, right? So I don't really know what else to say other than I'm sincerely sorry this happened. And, at the end of the day, I don't know if the fine can be reduced. I don't know I mean, I guess my seller's responsible for the fine because it was his property and he outsourced it to us. But anyway, that's all I can say. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Sure, thank you. I did have a question for you, kind of echoing Chris. Was the violation disclosed in the documents?
I believe we were already in contract and I personally did not receive a letter for the violation. So the current owner does not know that, but I'm happy to let him know that the violation is there, but it's not on the new owner to deal with it. It's on the seller to clear up that violation. The new owner should not be stuck with that violation. That had nothing to do with him.
Um,
So yeah,
Thank you.
that was an oversight. And you go through the entire disclosure package and towards the end you're in escrow. So at that point, typically we already have all the disclosures in hand, and so that was an oversight to, you know,
So the notice came
inform
in
them.
during escrow or before?
It came in. Yeah, I honestly can't remember it. It was during the holidays.
Sure.
Probably during the escrow this happened, but it was a situation I thought that my seller would resolve. So
Okay.
it's on the seller to deal with this. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Chris, quick question. Since the tree's cut and we need to have a replacement there, is that site suitable for a tree?
Yeah, it was created for a tree. And in some ways it could be to protect homes or, people making that turn if they get a little out of
Sure.
control. And the motivation was probably more purely aesthetic,
Yeah.
to have it be as green as possible. It wasn't kind of embraced or turned into the Lombard Street, Crooked Street,
Mhm.
in that sense that it's not, bricked. But there are events out there, like there's like every Easter there's a crazy big wheel thing that goes on where adults go on big wheels down the street. But the literal answer is yes, that's a bulb out for trees and landscaping.
Okay.
So it's a reasonable spot. I will say, that said, one of the steps we would do would be to kind of mark for utilities, just to rule out any underground utility conflict with replanting. So, I never say never, but I do believe it should be clear of utilities because we would have done that before. But that is one thing that we kind of do in the removal process, is we would verify, like, oh, is this site even replantable? Because sometimes we have an owner who comes to us and they're like, oh, this tree is a real headache, I want to get rid of it. And then we learn, like, oh my goodness, there's this underground conflict. We're not going to be able to knowingly allow you to plant a replacement knowing there's this conflict. Do we want to consider just holding on to that existing tree? So with that in mind, we have this process of it's called Underground Service Alert. It's a free service. They mark the roadway just to show any presence of the conflict. But that would be the process that we normally go through, just to triple check if it's a viable site
Okay.
for a replacement tree. But
Yes.
I did check. It shows as a tree in our database. There may be some other trees or bushes in other parts of that open space area that are not kind of cataloged like that. They're more volunteer plants. So it is a designated like place for a
Okay.
tree.
Yeah, I do see some roadway work. Adjacent to the tree, a section of the roadway was repaired, and it seems to have gone through the curb for that little bulb out. I don't know if it's related to maybe a side sewer lateral of some sort.
I noticed that it's the lighter colored. It's a lighter colored like rectangle.
Yeah,
It's
and
on the
it's
downhill side
rectangular.
of the bulb out.
Yes.
I did notice
Yeah.
that. I'm thinking, like, I wonder if that's when I'd also noticed the tree was pruned on the downhill side. I wonder if that pruning occurred to kind of facilitate better clearance for that equipment that did something.
Okay.
But good point about the presence of laterals, meaning
Yeah.
utilities that come out perpendicular to the roadway,
Yeah.
would be another thing that part of that utility check would be, we want to be at
Yes.
least 5 feet away on center if it's a sewer lateral.
Yeah, yeah. That that repair just kind of is indicative of something there. Normally, um, you wouldn't cut out a section in that shape unless it was maybe some sort of a deep utility.
That's right.
I also do see overhead wires directly on top of the tree and that are fairly low hanging. Would that be a problem if we planted a tree there?
No, so those are typically like service drops, and I'll pull it up on Google Street View, but those are usually service drops, so typically not a problem. That might be one of the decisions on why like a small stature tree at maturity was planted versus like a tall vertical growing. Oh yeah, I see the lines now. That's right. Yeah, so those are, it's mostly phone and cable, the lowest ones down, and then there's a secondary aerial cable at the top.
Mhm.
So those lines are pretty routine. I just looked at Google Street View. It doesn't preclude replacement. It would be a replacement tree that would also be small stature. You know, the one thing it does put in mind, because thanks for pointing that out as the hearing officer, it just means that a large stature tree at maturity is not an option for this site, meaning a tree that's going to grow really tall. So I do think the only new information I would say would be, because this is a small stature tree at maturity, even though the chainsaws right there into the base of the tree, the species, there are some species like conifers that don't sprout out with that new tissue. Some do. I think as part of the hearing officer and director's recommendation, is there any consideration towards seeing if this tree will sprout? Because if we're only going to get a small stature tree long term anyway, a tree that quote unquote resprouts, if it stays small stature tree, doesn't present the public safety concerns that we typically would have by allowing a tree to sprout back out, because those new branches will be not as strongly attached as
Mhm.
the original branching. But that could be a possible consideration here, is to see how this tree responds. Because the replacement is onerous. The replacement
Yeah.
tree size is a real challenge. So I think that,
How long would it
ideally,
take to
no,
see that
like ideally, like
response?
pruning cuts would be smaller, and then those smaller cuts could sprout. So it'd be a little bit of an extreme example. Not ideal, but I think that is typically something that we're considering, while we're evaluating. And the director would probably likely weigh in on that as well and say like, yes, that's an opportunity, or like, no, it's just too big a cut here. So I do think that's a decent discussion point,
Mhm.
that we should probably review before making a recommendation.
How long would it take to see a response from that tree?
Typically about 6 months.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Michelle, do you know when it was cut?
I I think in November. I can go back to
Okay.
my notes and let you know, and see when I asked the handyman to to clean up the foliage on the property, not the tree. So let me find out for you. Is there what's the best way to get that information to you?
The email on the hearing notice.
Okay. I'll
Yep.
just email you direct.
I'll put it in the chat as well.
Thank you, Cerise.
Did we lose you, Michelle, or is it my computer?
I
Let's see.
think she might be having some connection issues. Um, is there, okay, so if it's suitable, we are not subject to an in lieu fee. Am I correct, Chris?
That's right. Because
Okay.
the fine in the admin hearing, it talks about like a minimum like fine amount.
Mhm.
You know, it used to be that our minimum fine amount was the in lieu fee. So in February of 2022, the minimum fine amount went from the basic in lieu fee of like $2,400 up to 10,000 as like the base level for removal
Yes.
without a permit.
Okay,
Um,
okay. Yeah, I think we lost her. I don't know, she's gonna try to call back in.
yeah, if Michelle calls back in, obviously we'll have the hearing link to the YouTube video that she would be able to watch the end of.
Yes.
Um,
Okay,
so I do know that once you're done with any questions, if we do public comment and wrap it up, at least she would still be able to see any additional feedback that occurs.
yeah. I think I'm done with my questioning or any questions that I had. So I will open it up to public comment. I don't see any attendees. So I will close the public comment. And
Hi, guys. I'm so sorry. My phone overheated in my car.
yeah, no
So my
worries.
phone got shut down and then I just locked myself out of my car. I'm having a great day.
Oh, no.
I know, and I don't have a spare key for my car. I lost my spare key. So anyway, sorry, guys. I'm back. What did I miss and how can I help?
You didn't miss anything. I think I don't have any more questions for now.
Okay.
We just open it up to public comments. There are nobody from the public. So I am going to close this agenda item and I will proceed to close the hearing.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
Is community service an option? I don't know if I can get my client to cover the fine, so it's likely gonna have to come out of my situation. And I'm a single mom of 3 kids, sole provider, and I'm sure my handyman is not going to be willing to pony up, his portion of it. Is there a way that we can work out community service to cover the fine at all? Is that an option?
That is a good proposition. I think I need to discuss it more or research that more internally.
Okay, I would really, really appreciate it because and this tree situation obviously needs to be taken care of. And at the end of the day, it's my fault because I'm the representative and just the actions taken by the handyman, the demands taken by the seller, I tried to make everybody happy and it turned into this major horrible situation we're in.
Yeah.
So I'd love to do my part in helping in any way that I can. And the fine, it might be challenging, but I understand, that everything has a cost.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank
Chris, you had a comment?
Yeah, just one note. It's kind of along that line of thinking. I do know that we have the director does typically allow someone to take, it's no comedy, but we have a tree care class. So the idea that the director over time has had people walk into their office, really upset in similar situations, and so the director has come up with a way that helps, and it's not necessarily the whole thing, but I do believe that it's often conditioned, like a 50% reduction on attending the tree care class when you don't have a licensed contractor as your backup as a consumer. So I do think that would absolutely be in play here as one of their considerations. So along those lines, I am aware that that's something that the director will likely and the hearing officer are looking at their recommendations. That'll be part of it. So yeah, that and the tree care class, it's a couple of hours on a remote call, so it's very convenient. It's not like 7 nights over a month. It's just a way to help us justify, reducing. So yeah, I've now noted that down just to make sure that the hearing officer and the director have that in their mind.
I
Sure,
appreciate that.
Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hope you have a better day and a better week, Michelle.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
know. I'm sorry.
Sorry about getting locked out of your car.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
I appreciate you
you.
guys. Thank you. Have a good
Yeah.
day.
you
Okay.
too.
Bye.
Okay, hearing is now closed.